This next video about getting and staying organized as you do your work imagines that you have begun your inquiry. So we are in a new week of 130, and I don't actually have this set up yet, so the requirements aren't there. But let's just imagine, again, that you have last Friday, you made your content area selection, the place where you were going to begin your inquiry, and now we've come to this new week and it's time to get started, and your requirements will address that. You'll have some instruction about that, but basically you need to get moving. You need to start researching your content area, because as you surely know by now, the first step is to create that emerging expertise, develop that emerging expertise, so that you have a good broad view, a good big picture understanding of your content area, so that you can make a good decision about where you want to focus. So before we get to where we want to focus, we need to do some general research. So let's imagine you've done that, or at least you've started that. So here's what I have. Again, starting with week of 130-17 in this case, the first thing I would do is write the date that I came in. That was the Monday, the weekly tab. And again, I haven't done this yet, but let's just imagine time to dig into content by researching my topic and developing emerging expertise. Requirements this week: must show steady progress on inquiry, weekly conference, published EPU. Okay, normal stuff, just kind of overview. And then Monday tab. Instead of there being an adventure, like, how to access the co-op or something, the real required task here is to begin your research, to begin that inquiry. And so what I have here is begin inquiry, and I say see separate notes. So for me, and again, this is just my idea, I would want a separate page to begin my notes. And let's say I was starting with America's Rise to Power. That was the content area I was beginning in. And I might just put here the source. Annenberg Lerner, A Growing Global Power is the title. I don't have to worry about putting a link there right now, because this is just my handwritten notes. In part 3, we'll talk about how we keep the sources and answers to guiding questions and all that set. But right now, I'm just putting that source so I know which one I'm referring to. And then here are some notes from that source. And then I accessed a second source, ushistory.org, Seeking Empire. And then again, I've got notes. So for me, the most sensible way to organize yourself is to have your content area title, and then what you would continue to do as you access new resources, even if you end up not using them, as you're reading through it, you're jotting notes down and just, taking a little something from each of them, because that's how we begin to do more than just scan or read briefly. We actually want to learn something. And it's fine if what you learn from that source is that it's useless to you and it doesn't really help. But to show that you had some interaction with it, to show that you accessed it, began reading it, you've got some notes to show for that, that's important. Okay? We don't always pick the right sources right out of the gates. And it's fine that we ultimately decide not to use it, but having some notes to reflect that progress is important. So again, I would just be adding pages. I'd flip it to the back and I'd keep taking notes, and I'd access a new source and I'd list the source name just so I know. And again, I like to use some color in my notes so that it gives me a visual way to kind of see where to go to find certain information. That's all important to me. And I would just have a list of, or a group of papers that I could just flip through. And as I scan my notes, I can see very clearly that source 1 was this, and I got these notes, and here's source 2. And so maybe as I'm developing that emerging expertise over this first week, I might have 5 or 6 or 10 or who knows how many pages of notes. And then as I am doing that, I'm getting that initial expertise, that emerging expertise. And obviously, we'll talk more about what we do when we think we've reached the end of that particular stage where we have developed that emerging expertise. How do we show that? But again, if you don't have a record of it, if you don't take notes, you will never, and I do mean this, you will never pass that first stage. And obviously, that's not okay. There's no way you are going to demonstrate to me that you fully understand the context here if you don't have details, if you don't have specifics. And obviously, your weekly DPUs need to show this evidence. So that's the second real important reason to be taking these notes. It's not just because interacting with the sources and taking notes, all of that helps your understanding. It's also so that in your DPUs on Fridays, you can say, here's what I learned, and here's evidence of that learning. So that is the second part of this getting and staying organized and taking notes related to our work. I'll have another one to add to this shortly.